Hello, I'm a good friend of Mario, and we met, about 15 years ago, and that was when I was a registered nurse in mental health. I've in between that time, I have been with the police force. I've also been a magistrate, a justice of the peace, locally in Hampshire. And I went back to university as a mature student in mental health. And then I carried that on, and I was studying criminology. I've got a first-class honours degree in criminology, and I've got a master's in criminal justice and a postgraduate a postgraduate certificate in research methods. I'd like to say at this point that Mario has helped me a great deal and has been extremely supportive of my endeavours over the last few years. So I've been very, very fortunate. I'm also very pleased and delighted to have actually been invited to be a member of this group. And I hope I continue to be so for many moons to come. I've just completed writing my first book, which is a non-fiction book about a true life crime. And I'm halfway through writing another book about a cousin of mine who was in the French Resistance. And that's about it at the moment. Over to you, Mario.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for your introduction. Why you decided to participate in the book?
I've never attended or been a part of a creative writing group. I've never had the time to participate in such a group. I felt it important to move away from being an isolated writer under the restrictions of the pandemic. And I feel fortunate that I was provided with this opportunity to join a respected group of people. Going about the pandemic, I don't feel that it affected my mental health to a great deal, as I'm a very structured person, and I was able to instigate daily routines that allowed me time to accomplish routine tasks. I was unable to work at my normal employment, so the enforced lockdown enabled me to grow as a creative person. I was fortunate that I could still engage with friends and relatives electronically, and that I had more time to engage with my writing self, to use a good expression, within these daily routines. Years ago, I was in a very restrictive relationship, and my creative self was subdued under the shackles and the boundaries of that relationship. So it's taken me many, many years to realize my subdued ambition of being acknowledged as someone who's considered suitable to contribute as a writer.
Okay, Susan, thank you. Why did you decide to use this medium of fiction as a method of expression?
Literature, for me, I consider to be relative to freedom, and I wanted to express myself in a freer way than normal. So I'm someone, I generally write or try to write factual articles and reports. They're based on statistics normally. So I decided I'd use the restrictions of the pandemic to explore my creative side. I wanted to use my brain in an inventive way. I didn't really want to focus on the more technical aspects of writing. I wanted to challenge myself and the reader. Pre-pandemic, I'd actually entered an international poetry competition, and I won first prize. So this award opened up a new field of self-expression for me. It gave me the possibility that I could attempt to pass on my work, or more widely, really, and to express my innermost thoughts and feelings. My poem was actually about my work as a dementia nurse, and I felt that I wasn't subject to any boundaries that I couldn't cross by writing it. So that's why.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Who is your greatest literary influence, sorry, and why?
I think a lot of people who are British would come out with names like Jane Austen, etc. That's never really been of interest to me. My greatest literary influence, believe it or not, is Ira Levin, because I read his book, This Perfect Day in 1970. It's always resonated with me. I was about 18 at the time, and it is actually considered a great dystopian novel. It's basically alongside Anthony Burgess's, what did he write? A Clockwork Orange and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. I do believe that Levin probably used Huxley's work as a sort of a template, but it doesn't take away from what he wrote. I mean, Levin's work is a frightening glimpse into the future, but it still fascinates readers 40 years after publication, because it's set in a seemingly perfect society, which is global and uniform. There's only one language, and all ethnic groups have been eugenically merged into one race called the family. So the world's ruled by a central computer called Unicomp. Every single human on the surface of the earth is kept in check by this method. Individuals are continually drugged, they have regular injections, they can never realize their potential as human beings, but these drugs make them complicit and cooperative. They are told where to live, where to eat, whom to marry, who can reproduce, who can't. The men, for example, they don't grow facial hair, and the women don't develop breasts. It only rains at night. Always a blessing in the UK, but it's a vision as frightening as any in the sort of the science fiction genre, if you like. I think it's one of his most haunting novels, and I've read all his stuff. It's always made me cautious, actually, about government intervention in daily life. And it opened my eyes to the possibility of a homogenous society as decreed by government, with a denial of individuality of thought and expression. And a lot of people during the pandemic were actually coming out with these thoughts and writings on the internet, which is very interesting. So yes, that's my answer. It's got to be Ira Levin.
Okay, thank you, Susan. In that direction, in your short story, you talk about the use of eugenics to conserve the Earth's resources following the pandemic. Could you expand a little bit that, how that is related to what you already told me in this last question that you answered and this one that I'm asking you now?
This is an example of, in my opinion, and I can be challenged on this, obviously, of the Nazi concept of blood and soil, which is eco-fascism. And I've been reading about eco-fascism recently because I knew nothing about it. So fewer people, more resources, no disabled people, if that's the correct term to use, or older people to worry about. Only the beautiful survive. Currently, there's an inquiry into the UK government's handling of the pandemic. It's on British television at the moment. Sir Patrick Vallance, the scientific advisor to the UK government, was interviewed. Apparently, he kept notes at the time. This is according to the London Broadcasting Corporation website. And he wrote in December 2020, I believe, that the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, as at the time, said that he'd been acting early and that the public are with him, but his party are not. And apparently Johnson said that he thinks the whole thing is pathetic and COVID is just nature's way of dealing with old people. And then he says, I'm not entirely sure. I disagree. A lot of moderate people think it is a bit too much. Well, that's quite a damning statement. Excuse me. The argument is that ordinary people rather than social structures should be blamed for climate change still circulates, and it invariably pushes in the right-wing direction. I'm going to think about the El Paso shooting, so I apologize if this is upsetting to anybody, but the document he wrote to justify this, and it was a racial massacre, it wasn't anything else. It was a racial massacre. And in that, he said, if we can get rid of enough people, then our way of life can become more sustainable. I mean, that's just horrific. And it's a very glib statement in which he actually advocates environmental murder. So that marks him out as distinctly fascist.
Yes, thank you, Susan. I understood. Sorry, you want to say
I
something
beg your
else?
pardon. Sorry, I just wanted to remind people of a very well-known poem, which has always resonated with me. So I'm sorry to interrupt. And it's called First They Came by Martin Niemöller, if I've pronounced his name correctly. And it's first they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and then there was no one left to speak out for me. So, in my opinion, eugenics is a frightening concept, and we all need to stand up for our convictions, whatever they are. That's what I'd like to finish saying.
Okay, Susan, thank you very much. I think that we probably agree that this use of eugenics and eco-fascism and ethnic cleansing, and at the same time, these racist policies, which in some cases has been called, necrocracies, in which I would say people, mostly elders, and people with some disadvantages, physical disadvantages or mental disadvantages, are expendable. This has to be obviously with part of the story that you talk about sex Olympics, the uniformization, the I would say pleasure for everyone, but with certain rules, with certain restrictions, with certain allowances, and so on and so forth. I will ask if that kind of relationship exists within the sex Olympics with the drones in your storyline and the TV programs that manipulate individuals' sexual activities for public consumption, for instance. And do you think that this is morally and ethically wrong or not?
Moral and ethical questions have arisen, probably in the last couple of years, about how shows on television tackle issues like race, social media, abuse, body image, duty of care for the contestants, etc. And I was thinking about those shows when I actually wrote the Sex Olympics. with regard to Big Brother UK, which is currently on at the moment, it's acknowledged that some sexual activity occurred between contestants and was televised. With regard to these programs, my understanding is and speaking with other people, there are stimulants provided by the TV companies, such as alcohol, which is known to lower inhibitions. And one wonders if this actually is lowering the participants' views of consent. Because the contestants on these shows, they're deliberately chosen for their dissimilarity and opposing views and lifestyles, and apparently have never met. There's even been deaths connected to this type of program, which is horrific. Remaining with Big Brother, one ex-contestant is in jail currently because of revenge porn, whereby he got one of his ex-girlfriends, I believe, to come over to his house, and then they had sexual relations, and he filmed it, and then he put it up on the on social media. In this country, that's not allowed. You're not allowed to do that sort of thing. And so consequently, he went to court and he was jailed for that. There's also been very tragic deaths connected to this type of program. Programs like this are very skewed. They're a skewed version of life for both contestants and viewers. And I took this, I think the word might be simile, that's the word I'm looking for, into my my chapter about the Sex Olympics, whereby I describe the activity taking place in glass booths, which are glass all the way round, so that activities can be viewed at every angle, and they are beamed worldwide so that everybody can see them, and that it's even in the workplace, people could see them. So you've got a live studio audience with, actually going back to Big Brother again, there's a peak of sort of baying and judgmental frenzy, and there's also online trolling, and I could see that with regard to my story, which is why I put it in there, although I added that in my story that consent was part of it. And the master and commander of the earth that I sort of talk about, that's the equivalent of the Big Brother all-seeing eye. If for those of you who don't know, with the Big Brother program, there's an eye in the back, and it constantly, it's like a logo, and it constantly is in the background, so it's all-seeing, all-knowing. And also advertising between the episodes encourages purchase, which I don't agree with. But yes, that's actually where I took the basic for my essay, if you want to use that word. So that's where it sort of came from, and I expanded it.
Okay, thank you very much, Susan. I would like to ask you if you want to add something to your comments with the questions, something more personal if you want, more of your opinion about the current crisis that we are in, which we are living in at the moment, and if that can relate it obviously to your short story.
I think there's so many crises at the moment. We've got this dreadful business with Palestine and Israel. And I can't comment on that because my actual knowledge of that situation is very limited. And if I don't have the correct knowledge, I feel it's not my place to comment. The only comment I could make is that I think it's pitiful that it's come to this, and it's horrendous that this war is going on and has been going on for quite a while. With regard to eco-fascism, which, as I say, I've recently only come to start looking at and know a little bit about, fascism is always in this country, and I believe other countries, it's always associated with the right wing politically. I'm not much of a political animal, I have to say, but I abhor anything to do with restricting anyone's rights, and I do feel that people are independent. I just wish people would be kinder to each other. I just wish there was more understanding and acceptance of other people's cultures. I really do. I'm fortunate. I've got a lot of friends from different cultures. I've shared accommodation with people from different cultures. I've been in the workplace and at university with people different cultures, and I've really learned from those cultures. And at times I was very ignorant about those cultures, but I'm so grateful that people took the time to actually inform me and inform my understanding. The only thing that I can personally say is that coming from a Welsh background, I like to say we're a tribe, and I do sincerely feel that. And when I was a child, we lived in another part of the country, and because we were Welsh, people didn't speak to us sometimes, and people made fun of our accent, and also we were denied, as a family, we were denied certain things because of our Welsh background, and that was in England. So I think things have changed. I mean, we always used to be called Taffy, which is related to the River Taff that runs through South Wales and where a lot of my family come from. So I'm not pretending that I've ever been stigmatized, but I do feel I have experienced a little bit of tribalism. So I like to think that I try to remember that and try to be non-judgmental.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Thank you, audience. We are going to leave this podcast here. A very interesting analysis from Susan about her contribution, her experience as a human being in a society, and obviously the analysis and the relationships, with the media, with some programs, and the content of this short story that she wrote for us in the book. Thank you very much, and good afternoon again. And we are going to be continuing with the podcast, and we're going to have again Susan in another opportunity. Goodbye.